What's poppin', everybody? Tara Lynch here with The Next Big Thing, the video cast sharing all things infotainment. Today, I am so excited to welcome in Chief Meteorologist for ABC News, Ginger Z, joins us today. Plus, we go over this week's Newsbites and top trends. Lots to get to. You know what to do. Let's jump right in. We begin this week with our news bites as always, and we start with the debate heard around the world. President Trump and former Vice President Biden took center stage Tuesday evening for an event filled with a lot of crosstalk and interruptions. Topics discussed included COVID-19, healthcare reform, President Trump's taxes, which we will get to a bit later, and race relations within the United States. For more debate analysis, I recommend you check out The Point with Chris Silleza on CNN. He has a great article online right now, Hits and Misses from the first debate. Earlier this week, the New York Times released a shocking article saying that President Trump paid just $750 in federal income tax in 2017. That's the same year he took office. You can see the article here. Very shocking details, but President Trump was quick to his defense, saying he paid millions of dollars in federal income tax. Check it out.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars,
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it.
It is customary for a president to release their tax documents when they take office, but President Trump refused to do this. He even waged a legal battle to keep them hidden. He ultimately won. Now, this begs the question for many Americans, can they trust the president, and is this why he wanted them to stay hidden? Also, people are saying that he worked the tax codes as they currently exist, so it also begs the question, is this really how our tax system should work? This week, we have reached another sobering COVID-19 milestone globally. More than 1 million people have been recorded as dead from the virus, and here in the U.S., more than 200,000. Now, the top 5 countries with deaths include the U.S., India, the United Kingdom, Brazil, and Mexico. Argentina could be quick to join this list. Originally, they had contained the virus very well, but they have seen an increase in spikes, case numbers, hospitalizations, and deaths. If you wake up early enough, you may see this familiar face on your television screen. And if you're on social media, her and her family are sure to have a funny video for you. Now let's take a check a little closer to home. Ginger Z is here. Ginger, thank you so much for joining me today on The Next Big Thing.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And you know what? You just said my catchphrase, which is going to be the title of my next book that I just turned in. So you're ahead of me.
I'm ahead of you and I had no idea.
Oh, good job.
There we go. Okay, new book coming out. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, I want to talk about, on social media and on Good Morning America, you talk about your love of science and being a scientist first and a meteorologist first. So what inspired you to go into the STEM fields and into meteorology?
I was so lucky. I grew up with a mom who worked as a neonatal nurse practitioner. So science and women were something that was modeled right in front of me. So that's not something people have all the time. I did not, however, love being in the hospital. Like visiting my mom was torture. Seeing the little babies. Anytime I had anything to do with blood or the doctor, that's not my science. So I knew that really early, but I did have the model of knowing that women can be scientists, and a neonatal nurse practitioner with multiple master's degrees. She's an extremely educated and knowledgeable scientist. So I was lucky to have that, but then I was also lucky that post my parents' divorce, my mom almost married our dentist. It gets weirder, but there's a point to it because that dentist had a cottage on Lake Michigan. And I spent a whole summer watching thunderstorms come across Lake Michigan. And if you've never been there, Lake Michigan is this flat, open expanse, much like the Great Plains of the United States, where you can see forever. And I was able to watch the crafting and the beauty and majesty of our atmosphere before it got too rocky and we had to get inside. So I remember seeing those thunderstorms, water spouts, and just being enthralled. There wasn't really fear. It was more, how did that happen? And then that puzzle that is the atmosphere became the puzzle that I wanted to put together for the rest of my life. And so that's what I really went to study in college. I had no intentions on getting into television, but I think that that's why this has worked for me, because I've been fortunate enough to learn the other stuff along the way, but in my heart, and I think through my eyes, you can tell that that's what I care the most about.
That's so true. When you watch any of your reporting in the field, you can just see your excitement, and I think that makes all of us kind of pay more attention and get excited about weather. And you talk about being a young girl watching these storms on Lake Michigan. Again, we were talking about this offline. There's no real curriculum for weather when we are younger in elementary, middle school, high school. So if there are little boys and girls out there who want to get into weather but don't know where to start, what can they do now?
Yeah, I think, there's not anything for forecasting or for being aware or emergency management or planning really in most schools. And I think that's why I've had such great success going into schools. And I do a lot of Zooms now talking to different classes, because you can't expect everyone to be a meteorologist on top of being a teacher. They have a million subjects they need to cover. But I always think between that and finance, it's like what we don't learn but impacts us the most. So I wish that we could change that eventually. But if there is a young person who is passionate or interested, even has a peak of interest in meteorology, the most important thing is to just start doing the research. You have something that I did not have, and that is Google. You have the internet that has this wealth of knowledge. There are websites like Habeas Hints that are just kind of a really, really well done glossary. The American Meteorological Society has a lot of resources. The National Weather Service, if you start navigating that page, and then Storm Prediction Center and National Hurricane Center, all of those pages it would take you years to get through all of the data and information. And then just knowing, I think the other part that's really important for kids is most meteorologists are not on television. Most of them work in different parts, whether it's forensic meteorology, figuring out crimes with meteorology, which is a really exciting one, working for a company like American Airlines or UPS, where they can't have their ships or their airplanes going into bad weather. So you have to have meteorologists. You start thinking about it. Even the oil industry and the futures industry, that's where some of the big money is in hedge funds of forecasting hurricanes and what they need to do for shutdown to be the most efficient in the Gulf of Mexico, for example. So in climatology, there's so many arms of meteorology in the science that's the beauty is, even if, ABC News said to me, we're not really into you. Tomorrow, I could go get a job at all these places. And it's a really great place that my passion could find. I've just been lucky to be able to communicate the science and do what I'm doing right now.
So many places where meteorologists are needed, and even for parents at home, you can run very simple science experiments just to get your kids excited about science. We've seen that with your family, so we can always take a page out of your book and do that as well. I want to switch gears. You've been very open about some of your personal mental health battles, and with Mental Health Awareness Day coming up on October 10th, I just wanted to touch on this. What advice do you have if there are viewers of this show or viewers of Good Morning America or whomever that just need advice on how to continue to push through?
Yeah, my saying at the end of my first book, which that book, by the way, I went in intending to write a book for weather for babies because I didn't think there were any good ones out there when I was pregnant with my son. And then through a long story of me not thinking that I was a writer, but apparently being one, I was encouraged to write, and all of a sudden released a memoir about depression and suicide that became a New York Times bestseller. So the non-writer was proven wrong, and I learned a really valuable lesson. But I think the lesson at the end of that book is the one that I try to live by and really does help me. And that is, as a scientist, I know that our atmosphere, when there are clouds and storms, they don't last forever. That's not how the atmosphere and energy of our planet works. It's also not how life works. There can be long-lived storms. There can be Harveys that sit around for a long time, 2020s that feel like they last a long time, different life environment events that seem like they're forever. I promise they're not. And that's the one thing I often think to myself, could I go back, the morning that I wanted to take my own life and that I tried, could I go back and say anything to me at that moment? I don't know that I could, but that's definitely one of the pieces of advice I would give to me. And on top of that, we all want purpose, we want respect, we want love. I think finding those things that mean the most to you and paying the closest attention to your no, to your knowing, not no, like yes versus no, but like what you know and what you believe and what's truly in you. I've spent a lot of time this last 10 years after I was in an inpatient hospital for psychotherapy. I've spent a lot of time since then dedicating a lot of time, more than I do for the gym, for my body, to my mental health. And knowing that you have to do that, like, it's not easy. It's not easy to feel. It's not easy to admit all of this stuff. But boy, it keeps getting easier. Just like when you run another quarter mile the next day after you've been training, it's the same. My meditation is my sit-ups for my brain. My therapist every week is my personal trainer for my brain. And those are the things you can look at in a different way, and that I hope to keep encouraging people to do.
It's a very easy metaphor to follow, so thank you for sharing that with us. I want to just, on top of that, we're all dealing with social media. For me, it's one of my biggest fears going into this industry, having people hate on you, via their screen, via their keyboard, and I know that you experienced this as well. So I wanted to ask you, for myself, for everyone else, how do you work through these haters and stay positive and keep, going to your personal trainer for your brain and, doing those exercises so that you can focus on yourself?
Through my whole career, those haters have been my pull-ups, right? They're the ones that make me stronger, both in my social media life, which is not real, and in my personal life. Something that I learned first through the haters on social media was how to set up real boundaries and how to find my identity without other people's input. Social media helped me develop, for the first time in my life, something where my strength or my belief of myself inside surpassed what others thought. It's not an easy task because we're all impacted. And I won't say that, I'm a bulletproof to, things that people say, but I almost, first of all, if you're getting hate, good job, because that usually means you're being seen. And it usually means you've got about 3 to 5 times more love coming at you. You just didn't pay attention to. And I think that's, if you're not getting any response, I don't know if you're doing the job that you need to be doing. Like, people are polarizing. And the other thing I always think, I'm sure that, Tara, that I'm sure there's someone that you say, I don't love watching that person, or like an actor or an actress, or like Nickelback, not to bring up the Nickelback thing, but like, because that seems to be more of a common one. Jennifer Love Hewitt, I always say this. She's a wonderful human being. I've now seen her, interacted with her, but growing up, I didn't like how she acted. I would never write her on Twitter and be like, I don't like how you act. She's just not my style. And knowing that too, is that we're all humans and we all have fits and styles. You're not going to be everybody's style, whether you wanted to or not. And I'm the one that was like unknowingly petitioning to be homecoming queen for 8 years because I just wanted everyone to like me. I've grown so much from that person. And I think that knowing that I like myself and knowing that I don't care if everyone knows that I am imperfect has made me the most homecoming queen I've ever been in my life.
That really resonated with me, so thank you so much for sharing that. Quickly, before we wrap up, I want to touch on that book that we mentioned off the top. Any hints that you can give us?
Yeah, I think the first book that I released, I went through a couple evolutions of it because after I finished writing it and it was about to go to print, I said to my husband the night before, I think this is a mistake. I think I said too much. I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about what people are going to think. And then he reminded me of just what I just said to you. And he also said, if you don't feel nervous right now, then your book's going to mean nothing. Your book's going to do nothing. It's going to be another one of those nice news people does a book with a pastel sweater on the front, like arms crossed. Like, that's not me. And that's why I didn't want the cover like that. And that's why I wanted to break into that other wall so that people could see me as a complex human being and learn something. And let me tell you that as soon as I read the audiobook, I was like, wait a minute, did I say enough? Because I feel like I really went light on this one. I know now because I've, had 3 years after this has been printed, the thousands of people who have contacted me saying everything from you brightened my day to you saved my life with your book. That's why I wrote that book. Books aren't about making money unless you're like Diana Gabaldon and doing Outlander. Like, you have to be really good to make money. Books are about touching people and connecting our stories and doing it on a broader scale. And I think that's what this has allowed me. I still get a DM or message, or at least several times a day on different platforms, of people that have just read my book and just felt the impact. And then we develop a relationship. And I think that's what, going to my next book, what I started to realize was that first one was Ginger light. I had left out of a lot of really important details, some really difficult things that have happened that I didn't get into, and that have a lot to say about what's happening right now, even in the last 6 months or 7 months. And so it covers kind of a whole span, dotting between what you missed in the first one and what's happened since then. And a lot has happened since then. And so I think that's the beauty of continuing your story. You can keep telling it. And I'm listening to Untamed right now, which is such a popular kind of book that a lot of people resonate with. And I think what she says in the middle, at least I'm in the middle of the book, is that she at one point was writing her story instead of living her story. And I think I've also found that I am finally living my story and being present and grounded in my story before giving some advice that I don't, that's like vacant advice. And so I think this book takes those tools that I've used in this extreme therapy that I've had for the last 10 years and puts them together. As a scientist in meteorology, I'm a communicator of science, and I've gotten pretty good in my science at doing that. I think those skills are now being applied to psychology that I've learned. And now I can say, all right, I know an analogy that's going to help people. I know how to communicate this step in therapy. And along the way, selfishly, it's helping me heal the whole time too.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that sneak peek. We'll keep an eye out for. Now let's get a check a little closer to home. I'm glad that I opened with that. I was a little nervous to do so, but I'm glad that I wrote it down.
I will say it's not approved yet, but it's pretty close. I mean, I don't know what else we're going to call it. It's my thing, right?
I know. We can't have it be anything else. Can't be. Yeah. Ginger, thank you so much for joining me today on The Next Big Thing. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ginger, for joining me today. And if you'd like to hear more from her, you can tune in Friday at noon here on IGTV for an extended conversation. Okay, we turn to the trends we love, and we start with Taylor Swift. Now, she's broken so many records, I can't keep track anymore, but I think we'll all remember this one. She just beat out Whitney Houston for the most weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200. Now, Houston's record set back in 1987 was 46 weeks. Now, Folklore just entered its 7th week at #1, pushing Swift to 47 weeks overall across all of her albums. She has a long way to go, though. The Beatles hold the record among all artists at over 130 weeks. Elvis Presley holds the record for male artists, so Swift is in some pretty elite company. And we turn to the Buffalo Bills. Now, we know that they are my favorite team. They are 3-0 right now, but I bet you didn't know this. The general manager is giving back in a big way. GM Brandon Beane and his family are donating the adoption fees for pets for every touchdown that the Bills score. This week, 5 touchdowns were scored. That means 5 adoption fees were paid. The SPCA of Buffalo is hoping that their little draft picks are selected soon. Our trend for you this week is all about blue light glasses. Now, do they work? Do they not work? Can they help your eyesight when you're staring at a screen all day? Well, I bought some, I tried it out, and for me, they're very helpful. I was getting headaches from being on Zoom all day long, but when I got these, they kind of made the headaches go away and just made it a lot easier to see my screen. You can really tell the difference the first time you put them on. The blue hues kind of go away, replaced by a yellow tint, which is much easier on your eyes. So I recommend you try them out. Although I am not a scientist, I don't have any scientific research, but they seem to be helping for me. Let me know if it works for you. Before we head out today, check out this video. A baby sloth hands his handler a tiny little flower. So cute. This will send you off into the weekend. Happy Thursday. Okay, all you cool cats and kittens, that's all the time we have today on The Next Big Thing. Come back next week for more. Thank you to Ginger Z for coming on. Happy weekend. And remember, when you need the news that pops, I'll be here with The Next Big Thing.